Hello there and welcome to the channel. This is Nerd of War. Now, I am not a true historian. I'm just someone that really loves history. As you may know if you've come here from one of my other channels, which is Nerd World History. This channel is dedicated generally to military history, hence the name if you didn't get that. Now, this episode is going to be on a war hero from the Second World War you've probably heard of if you've clicked on this video, and if you haven't, we're going to get into his story. And that is Mad Jack Churchill, or sometimes known as Fighting Jack Churchill. He was, quite frankly, the quintessential bonkers British eccentric officer you'd come to expect from what our reputation for being a little off kilter gives us. Individuals like this and others have built this image within the British Army of being resourceful, somewhat eccentric, maybe a little belligerent, aggressive, and downright, well, mad officers in the British Army. Hobart's Funnies as another example. But with that said, let's get into this. After you like, share, and subscribe, comment down below on this character, your thoughts and feelings, and maybe hit the bell notification icon as well while you're down there. Click on the links to my other channels and go like, share, and subscribe over there as well. With that said, let's get into Mad Jack Churchill. Churchill was born in 1906 in Surrey, England. His father was pretty much what you'd expect from someone of this nature. And he was an administrative engineer who was assigned various different colonial outposts across the British Empire, including Hong Kong and other places in the east, spending a lot of his time abroad while his sons, his wife and his 3 children, stayed home and, did the British thing of getting educated, looking longingly at maps of the empire and thinking how good we've done. I imagine, allegedly, maybe. As stated, he had 2 brothers. Those being Thomas, born in 1907 and dying in 1990, and a younger brother, Robert, born in 1911 and being killed in action in 1942 while serving in the Royal Navy. All these brothers would ultimately enlist in the army, but it was Jack who actually enlisted in the military in 1926, initially long before the Second World War. He would be stationed at various outposts across the world, including India and Burma, where he developed something of a reputation for being a little, again, eccentric, doing things like riding a motorcycle all the way across India. He also learned to play bagpipes, learning to play them from an actual Highlander. During his time in the East, he would earn the medal of the Indian General Service Medal. But he would eventually return to Britain, but he would find army life was starting to bore him. Once he returned to Britain, he would leave the military and become, well, various things, but one of his more notable ones was he entered into various athletic accomplishments and actually represented Great Britain in Norway in archery competitions. Now, with this guy, remember that. Archery, big part of his life and his career. So, yeah, first of all, he's competitive in archery. However, during all this time, he had remained a reservist for the British Army. In 1939, when that inevitable war broke out, he was recalled to service and returned to active military life. He was deployed with the British Expeditionary Force that went into France to try to repel the Germans. Everyone thinking, of course, back then that the conflict was going to mirror the one from 20 years earlier and it was going to devolve into trench warfare, etc., etc., etc. Not really here for the detailed brief history of the Second World War here, but kind of what everyone was expecting. But Churchill, being the crazy loon that he was, decided that when returning, he actually took some of his own weapons. He earned a reputation for carrying a sword and a bow and arrow into battle. In fact, he has the distinction of being the last known soldier in an active military theatre to kill an enemy combatant deliberately with a bow and arrow. I say that, I'm going to use the word allegedly because I can't find any instances of it happening since, but I'm sure people have been killed by bows and arrows since, but this is during war. He actually went out of his way to kill someone with his bow and arrow. He carried it for actually more pragmatic reasons than you would think. Not that his name, Mad Jack Churchill, belies this idea that he's actually insane. He's not. He just was eccentric. He actually carried the bow because a bow and arrow is quiet. And if used skillfully, a bow and arrow is out of place in the modern battlefield. It's only lethal at maybe 200 yards, something like that. But it's accurate if you know what you're doing, and again, quiet. Far more quiet than a gun. It meant that the first few shots, it might be difficult for the enemy to return fire and know exactly where it's coming from. And it's deadly enough, and even if it doesn't kill you, it's certainly going to injure you, slow you down, and inconvenience the other troops in your division. While they were besieged and contained by some German soldiers, he would kill the first German he saw with his bow. He then managed to hold off like a badass the rest of the German forces with 2 machine guns, staying there until he literally ran out of ammo and he simply couldn't stay there any longer. He'd taken by this point a bullet to the shoulder, but he still managed to get his regiment out of harm's way, prevent them from being captured, and get them safely back to Allied lines, even with his injury. The man was a literal badass in every way. Later, in 1941, we're going over the highlights here, he would be involved in British raiding forces while he was second in command of a Commando unit attacking German fish oil production factories in Norway. One of the ways he, again, earning his reputation for being a little mad, inspired his troops. Although, you know, if you've ever heard bagpipes inspiring, maybe they were just trying to get away from him. It might have been a terror tactic against the enemies. I mean, bagpipes could almost be considered a war crime if they're not played properly. Yeesh. That's a joke. I actually quite like bagpipes. It's not a funny joke. I take the whole thing back. I'm so sorry. Anyway, he actually went and he played, well, basically marching and charging at the damn Germans. March of the Cameron Men. He would then lob a grenade at the Germans, get his sword, and he charged at the German lines waving a damn sword. And he survived. Badass. He would go on to earn the Military Cross and the Victoria Cross, as well as a few other accolades. Other postings during the war, he would fight in Sicily and in Yugoslavia. It's unfortunately in Yugoslavia where things took a turn for the not so great. He was captured during an engagement. He was sent to a POW camp where they actually mistakenly believed, because of his name Churchill, that he was related to Winston Churchill, the then British Prime Minister and leader of the British Empire and its resistance against the Nazis. He was actually given preferential treatment and special treatment, like VIP treatment, because of this. Although, I should point out, he's actually of no known relation to Winston Churchill. It's just a coincidence that the two men had the same name. Although, based on their fighting spirit, you could easily see how someone could maybe get them confused. He was by this point a colonel, and he was well respected and probably well known by the Germans as well as a sort of a fighting man that the British had. He would go on to escape from this prison, be recaptured, and then sent to another POW camp in Austria, where he would escape again, this time more successfully, getting back to British lines. Germany would surrender. He would be then dispatched to go and fight in the east, but unfortunately for him, and I mean unfortunately because he was disappointed, allegedly, according to all reports I can find, the war was over. He was supposed to be posted in Burma, and by the time he got there, the Japanese had already surrendered, and the war was officially over. He is then given the sort of relatively famous quote of, "If it wasn't for those damned Yanks, we could have kept this war going for another 10 years. And I imagine that was also ended with a But, yeah, he was a fighting man. And clearly enjoying the war. He shouldn't do that. That's probably not one of his redeeming character traits, but it's interesting. And I also, it may have been a comment in jest, I wasn't there. He would continue to serve in the military after the Second World War, being posted to the Middle East, and doing various things there, including saving a load of people from a hospital and minor little instances. But eventually he would be returned to Britain, where he would actually become involved with the British Army apprenticeship scheme, basically teaching people life skills and other such things while in the military. Now, this was a very useful thing, and he would basically carry on doing this for a long time. He did earn, again, many sort of reputations as being an eccentric, as a man like this would. One of his things he was known for doing, and I think personally, I think he was doing this just to, shits and giggles, unnerve the people, and what the fuck. He was known for, on his train journey home, he would randomly open the window and throw out his briefcase out of the train window while it was moving, much to the sort of shock and what the hell by all the other passengers, who clearly didn't know who Mad Jack Churchill was. What he was actually doing was very skillfully aiming his bag at his own backyard and throwing it into his garden as he drove past. He would eventually die at the age of 89 in the year 1996. And I've heard it quoted before, and personally agree that this man is a rarity. He's a diamond in the rough, to quote Disney. And we don't get many, if any, more people like this. And a man with this kind of independent, natural tendency towards war, just sort of a natural soldier and natural tactician, that with the levels of aggression and eccentricity, it's not likely to happen again, probably not in my lifetime. It's unlikely. Possible, but unlikely. And this man is very distinctive and unique in history, and is deserving, I think, of remembering. And if you have heard of him before, I'm sure you already know it's a fun story to listen to about the sort of eccentric sort of goings on of a crazy British army officer charging into battle with a bow and arrow and a sword, playing bagpipes, and basically kicking the crap out of the Germans. He captured dozens of enemy soldiers during the conflict. Obviously, he eliminated many others and unalived them. Damn YouTube algorithm. But he led one of the most successful, impressive, and interesting and diverse lives that anyone, I think, in history can possibly aim to live. Travelled the world, served on the side of what was, I think, the side of good throughout history for the most part. Now that, of course, is a bigger issue than this video, but certainly he did himself, his family, and his nation proud. And I think Western civilization owes men like him a debt of gratitude, and this should be remembered, and that's what this video is about. We're here to remember Mad Jack Churchill. We are now, however, at the end of this video. If you have enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, hit the bell notification if you want to get more of these videos when they are uploaded. I don't upload to this channel very often because I'm very busy with multiple other YouTube channels, but when I do, if you want to get notifications for them, hit the bell. This video, I hope, was informative, but most importantly, I hope you not only learned something, but more enjoyed it, because that's what we're here for. We're here for a little bit of escapism, aren't we? And I hope it entertained you, and I hope it was interesting, and I hope we all learned something. There is, of course, more to this man's life. I will link in the description box below the sources for most of the information that I got for this video if you want to read up about him yourself, or quite frankly, just Google him, because that works too. With all that said, thank you for watching, and bye-bye. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share, and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now. And in the description box below, there are links to my other social media accounts.